Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Living Theosophy's Sunday Night Live. Now, the commentary on this one will be live. You'll be able to comment in real time as this is premiered on tonight's show, but this has been taped in advance. So if we don't answer your questions right away, we will in the chat. So welcome. This is a very exciting show. We've been talking about this. I want to remind you that this episode of Living Theosophy is in collaboration with the TSE, the Theosophical Society headquarters out of London, England, and the all-new Virtual Center for Theosophical Studies and International Center of the Theosophical Society, which is committed to making known these ancient teachings of Theosophy to the youth around the world via the internet. This is very exciting. We are currently in the process of forming a volunteer team made up of TS members from all over the world. And if you'd like to participate or get in touch, just drop me a line. I will put a link in the description down below. Tonight, you will recognize him. I wonder if I should spotlight you, Ger. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Tonight, our guest is the one and only Gary Kidgell. Gary is a very dear friend. He's become a very dear friend because of these shows. He is a metaphysician, a fellow dedicated student of Theosophy, and an absolutely spot on professional esoteric astrologer. Friends, and myself included, have referred to Gary's extraordinary accuracy as similar to that of a modern day Dr. John Dee. That's true. It's true, Gary. Look at your face. It's true. Gary has lectured extensively on esoteric subjects, and he possesses a particular interest in the symbolism of myth, dreams, and meditation, and its capacity to enable one to practice higher manas or abstract thought, the current frontier of human consciousness. His brand new book is out. So let's go to gallery here so we could see. Look at this. I was the first one to get a copy. Here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's subject is this book. What a beautiful book it is. Again, it is called Greek Hero Myths, and this is the symbolism of transformation. This book has some amazing, we're going to talk more about it. Hold up. I want to show you these color photos in here are incredible. This is a must-have book. Again, this is called Greek Hero Myths, Pathways to Higher Consciousness. He also has another book which has been distributed internationally, and that is The Inner Journey, Pathways to the Higher Self. And I'm going to give you a link to get a copy of this book, okay? So I'll put it up here on the screen. Just go to soul-centered-astrology.com and go to books, and you'll see it there. This is fresh. Matter of fact, it still smells fresh from the printers. It is hot off the press, and that is what we'll be talking about tonight with Gary. Again, in this book, Gary illustrates the triumphs and travails that relate to the spiritual development. They are beautifully illustrated by the symbolism found in these ancient myths and of the adventures of the questing heroes. So in a way, we've talked about this before, these stories passed down through the millennia are not just stories. That's the way they transferred the wisdoms, the ancient wisdoms, through time. And Gary is an expert on this. Gary, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the one and only Gary Kidgell. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you very much, Anne. I hope I can live up to that wonderful introduction.
I know you can. As a matter of fact, it's an absolute guarantee. I appreciate your time with us tonight. So in real-time comments, I will be there answering your comments. We'll also answer the comments that come in after the video has been up for a while, and there's lots to discuss. So if you have any questions, please type that. I will be there with you live, but in the comments section. So Gary, this book, I'm very honored to have received. Like I said, the first copy came out, and look, I've got a signed copy of it, which is very, very exciting. The cover, you want to tell us just a little bit about while we're looking at it before we go into it. Who is on the cover? Let me see if I can get that up there. And
that is the hero Perseus riding on Pegasus after he has decapitated Medusa the Gorgon. He is riding on the sea of the unconscious.
Ooh.
In the background, one can see Olympus, the realm of the gods, the realm from which Jung's archetypes or divine ideas are dispensated. And behind Olympus, there is the sun, of course, being the great solar being from which we all emanate, from which we all proceed, and who ultimately, through treading the spiritual path, we will all return. This myth is probably my favorite one. I particularly love when Medusa is decapitated, Pegasus emerges. There is a correspondence between Medusa the Gorgon and the Indian Kali, the consort of Shiva, or one of his consorts. Shiva and Kali are related to destruction and renewal. You know, old forms are destroyed, new ones are created. And it is only by being able to transcend those forces and everything within our psyche which we fear that the symbolic Pegasus emerges, whereby we can then ascend to the Olympian heights, what the wisdom teachings would refer to as Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, the realms of the soul. The cover was conceived by the publisher, Richard Painter, who's also a friend of mine. I told him I particularly liked this myth. And initially I suggested having the constellations in the background because the conclusion of the myth, Perseus and Andromeda, the conjunctio of the alchemists, the Hieros Gammus, the sacred marriage, they're then symbolically freed from the wheel of rebirth and elevated to the stars, which is one of the ways in which the Greeks would pick their transcendence symbolically. And then Richard suggested Olympus, wonderful symbol for the realms of the soul or higher self. Jung spoke of archetypes or divine ideas, and the Greeks used the heights of Olympus to symbolize how these transcendent evolutionary forces are poured down as a means of assisting humanity in terms of realizing its evolutionary purpose.
Oh, that's so beautiful, because when we were studying it in school, to us, it was an abstract kind of an entertainment. But now understanding that each and every one of them has meaning, and the soul, the source, the sun. We're all looking at the same sun. Do we not share the same sun? There's so many things in symbolism. Symbolism has been around since the beginning of time. And what other way for these teachings to come down to the current age, and the way that you explain these in great depth, like you just did with that, it literally does give me goosebumps upon goosebumps. So I'd like to talk about that. All of us are on the spiritual path. It doesn't matter whether you're not aware of it or not. That's what we're here for. So one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about that is, you know, we say we're on the path together. We're all at different levels on the path. How would you describe to those who are watching, whoever's here is obviously interested in Theosophy, or you might have stumbled across this video. If what you see resonates with you, I would ask you, please comment, please share this video, and click the notification button and subscribe for more content like this from Gary and others. But how would you describe this spiritual path? Because I'm going to leave it to you, though. How can you describe the path that all of us are on?
Perhaps unsurprisingly, I describe this in terms of classical teachings, those of Theosophy, how as aspects of the divine, the solar logos, we as monads are projected down into matter as part of a vast evolutionary process. And our development and growth aids to the development and growth of the great solar consciousness, which we are a part of. Initially, spirit must get fully involved in matter. That is part of the process. You know, this takes many lives. And then when the appetite of the soul or higher self, that's the intermediary between spirit and matter, whose purpose is the very reason behind our existence as personalities, eventually the soul or higher self, its appetite for experience in matter is sated. And then one is called back to the symbolic Father's house. That is when the spiritual path begins. And in terms of mythology, the various hero myths of our world can be construed as symbolic depictions of the spiritual path. This is the path which Madame Blavatsky referred to as a road steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road, and it leads to the very heart of the universe. And when we tread that path, as HPB states, all that is good and all that is evil surface. The higher self will test us to ascertain our worthiness as its instrument. It will seek to offload more karma. And in terms of the hero myths, all of the tests and trials of the hero represent those of the spiritual aspirant.
Oh,
The various monsters, the arch villains, the helpful gods and goddesses, the obstructive ones, the wise old men, the crones, and so on, they are all within us, and they surface when we tread the path. They are within us, and of course, what is within us resonates with our circumstances in the outer world. And these archetypal experiences will come to us under different guises.
well, you mentioned that path, the path steep and thorny, many pitfalls, precarious, and we will stumble and we will fall. But as we are on this journey, as you mentioned, as we rise up these obstacles, these villains, these, gosh, what would you call them? Just tests. They're tests that we must pass. And there is no getting out of school. You cannot pass it by exiting this life. You can't pass up learning. You have to stay here and you must learn, and you will repeat these lessons until you do learn. As you're looking at all of these different, as you look into all of these different gods or heroes, because we're talking about the Greek heroes, and it's almost sometimes as I'm reading them, I can see and recognize in my own life and in other people's lives, I'm like, oh, this is obviously a trial to overcome. We must overcome ourselves. Isn't that the main thing? Though these trials come, the true victor is yourself over yourself. Is that true?
Absolutely, Anne, you've hit the proverbial nail on the head there. And the most famous, the greatest of the Greek heroes is Heracles, or the Roman Hercules. And when he sets off to perform his 12 labors, he has a lot of imperfections which are gradually ironed out through the various labors. We don't start treading the path as a finished article. It is the experiences along the way, symbolized in the Heracles case by his labors and future tests, which determine our right to proceed further and ultimately to attain our goal. It is the experiences which enable us to obtain elevations in consciousness and the enhanced capacity to carry and express the divine life force, leading to the initiations, the higher initiations of Theosophy, and in many of the Greek myths, the attainment of transcendence, the Hindu moksha, liberation from the wheel of rebirth is symbolized.
I love the way that you tie them all together, because Theosophy, again, is not exclusive. This is the same stuff that's been talked about since the beginning of time. It's ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom. It is based on experience. It is, and it's been tried and tested through the millennia. We're calling it Theosophy because I think you said it was in one of the previous episodes, the most perfect paradigm of the today. This is the most accurate place to find this source. Is that
of course correct? That is my opinion. That comes with a caveat. The phrase, I love horses for courses. The theosophical paradigm, which I love, suits me. It may not suit everybody else. I have friends who are Kabbalists, shamans, and so on.
There too. The teachings,
they're not a million miles from each other, of course, not at all. But I particularly like Theosophy. And the reason I love Jung and symbolism is because of the link between soul and personality, the Antakarana, or rainbow bridge, constructed out of abstract thought or higher manas. And by studying myth, the symbolism of dreams, etc., we are exercising abstract thought. That is why I believe Jung's work was the most important of the 20th century, because he is essentially relating these archetypes or divine ideas which underlie the human condition, which are formless, which we apprehend within the psyche through symbols. In terms of the myths, of course, throughout human history, we have sought to understand these invisible forces, whether it's through the shaman in the tribe, the various cultures, of course, the bards and storytellers would apprehend these archetypes. having their own particular experiences. There was Adolf Bastian, the 19th century German polymath, took Plato's idea of the archetypes, obviously pre-Jung, and he spoke of elementary ideas, or Elementargedanken. I don't speak German, so I hope that's correct.
That's good.
He was talking about the archetypes in their pure form, and then Volkergedanken is folk ideas. This is how the particular civilization or culture interprets the archetypes. And in this book, I have looked at the Greek hero myths and very much borne that in mind, viewed them as a symbolic depiction of the past. And it's very interesting in the Heracles myth, for example, he performs the 12 labors at the behest of his cowardly cousin, King Eurystheus. Eurystheus is symbolic of the personality. After Heracles slays the Nemean lion, the personality, Eurystheus is so terrified, he then after that, he asks the smiths to construct the bronze urn, which he can hide in when Heracles arrives, and he has a herald announce the next labor. He is symbolic of the personality without the hero archetype. Without the hero archetype, you know, we are unable to tread the path. This is what Joseph Campbell wrote about, The Hero's Journey, his famous book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Very much relates to the spiritual path. Campbell spoke of what he called the call to adventure, where something happens in the hero's life, something happens in our life, which then draws us inwards into the mythic landscape of the psyche. Campbell's hero then, he ventures into the distant and dangerous lands which represent the human psyche, where there are many tests and trials. And if the hero is able to overcome these, he undergoes initiation, but thereafter he returns to the rank and file of humanity, offering the lessons of illumination to others as an act of service. This occurs frequently in the Greek myths. Cadmus, after slaying the Ismenian dragon, dweller on the threshold, lower nature, he then accesses the pure spring, realms of the soul. But thereafter, he introduces the Phoenician alphabet to the Greeks. He constructs the city of Thebes, work of the initiate. Perseus, after slaying Medusa, he founds the city of Mycenae, was another one. This is very, very common. Theseus unifies Attica under Athenian rule after he slays the Minotaur, dweller lower nature, within the labyrinthine maze of human existence. These are common themes. And this call to adventure, it's different. Heracles is driven mad by Hera, the goddess. I want to talk about the goddess.
Yeah, we're going to get to the goddesses. And there's so many things I want to ask you on this. There's a couple things I do want to talk about.
Thereafter. Let's move on then. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. There's so many things. There's so much here. I could keep you here for hours. I was thinking about when you were talking, the overcoming the personality. I remember when a lot of people hear that for the first time, they have to let go of this earthly personality to transcend that. As you mentioned that when you talked about being separated from the higher self, so they can't tread the path. Could you, in a couple sentences or shortly, describe how we must overcome that personality? We're attached to who we are, how people perceive us, what we've attained, what we're called, what our labels are. What is it that we need to overcome the personality, the lower self, the earthly self, to attain greater heights? How would you describe that to someone who's just hearing this for the first time? Why do we need to do that?
There are tried and tested spiritual practices, meditation, study of esoteric writings, service to humanity, which draws down the energies of the soul. We don't fight the personality on its level. We take the higher ground, but also we practice things such as self-observance, discrimination, the Hindu Viveka, becoming aware of who we are, perhaps undertaking a daily review in the evening as to what we've done during the day, becoming aware of disparate aspects of our psyche, just what the transpersonal psychologists call subpersonalities. These must be fused into a coherent whole. pole. Odysseus starts off with 12 ships. He's left with just himself. You know, all these aspects of the psyche are being cast off.
Falling away. They're falling away. Well, thinking about that, how we are overcoming ourselves, transcending ourselves, as we go through that, we still need to operate within the earthly body to experience this. We cannot, you don't just forget yourself completely, though you have to it's your ego, it's that self-importance and the separate self that you need to overcome. You must experience and discover all of this for yourself. What Gary is saying to you, what you hear here on the channel, or what you read in a textbook, that's all it is just information until you process it yourself. So there's lots to talk about, and I wanted to move forward to the dreams. I did want to talk about really quick. I'm so sorry. It's just so interesting is that we tend to dismiss them as, oh, that was weird. You know, I was doing this, walking down the street with an ice cream cone, and so-and-so came by and blah, blah, blah. And then I fell off a cliff, and then there was this car. And people think that that's just your brain shooting out random thoughts. From my understanding, it is the higher self communicating with the lower self, that if we can remember this information, could you give us just a sentence on your view of the importance of dreams?
We have to discern. Sometimes it can, you know, the astral plane intervenes, but dreams, basically, how it works, all our experiences give the higher self a collection of symbols through which it can communicate with us in abstract ways.
Yes.
And it is giving us guidance and direction via the psychopomp, Hermes, the divine messenger in Greek myth. And the challenge for us is through abstract thought to interpret these dreams and thereby ascertaining direction from within.
So we should pay attention to them, and we truly are.
Particularly the waking dream, yes, very much so. That's the ideal time for the higher self to communicate, when the personality vehicles are still, they're acquiescent, the mind, emotions, and body.
In meditation, that you'll be able to access.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the higher self communicates to us symbolically.
Oh, so beautiful.
The formless realms are represented through symbols. They are the interface between form and the formless.
So I would say to those of you who are watching, pay attention to those things that you think that ice cream cone doesn't represent something in that dream or whatever these things. There's lots of information coming in to you in lots of ways, that it is up to you to interpret it and then apply it. And pay attention to it, because don't dismiss anything. Don't dismiss it. I wanted to talk about, as we're moving forward, in the nature and the function of the myth. In HPB, I can't remember the exact quote, but she says, pay attention to your myths and legends because there is much truth there. Now that is a paraphrase, but you probably know the quote better than I do. And I know you also have some slides. The nature and the function of myth. This is about, again, this book is Greek hero myths. We're talking about the Greek hero myths, but you heard him say Heracles and Hercules. These similar stories coming through, and also in the Alexandrian philosophers, you will be seeing it through the Kabbalah, through the alchemists. You'll see all this stuff coming through, same information in Theosophy. But what is the function of myth, if you were going to sum that up for us, if you could? Why are they there?
Well, one of the quotes I chose, my favorite one is from C.S. Lewis.
Did you want to put it up? Did you want to put
I
it up?
will do, yes, of course. Let me display this for all to see. Here it is. Myth is the isthmus which connects a peninsular world of thought with that vast continent we really belong to. The isthmus, which connecting the two pieces of land, of personality and soul, that is effectively the Antakarana, which the study and interpretation of myth symbolically serves to build the vast continent, of course, the realms of the higher self, and beyond that, our spiritual essence, the monad. There's another quote I really love from Jean Houston. I put her name twice there for some reason. A myth is something that never was, but is always happening. Now, what I particularly love about that is because it encapsulates the way humanity seeks to understand the archetype. It never was. It wasn't an actual event. It's not a bit-by-bit recording of an event. It's more a depiction of archetypal forces, and it's going on all the time. this is important, of course. Rupert Sheldrake talks about morphic resonance. And when we as members of humanity respond to the archetypes, the divine ideas of the solar and planetary being, which we are a part of, we are contributing to these energy reservoirs. We are co-creators, so we help to build the archetypes. If we respond to them as personalities, we are creating astral and mental reservoirs. But if we respond to them spiritually, we are depositing energies at the level of the soul. So when we study the hero myths, the life of the Buddha, etc., we are actually attuning to that archetypal reservoir. And more importantly, even when we tread the path, when we undertake the adventures of the mythic heroes in our own life, and we are depositing energies to the hero archetype, which assists those who follow after us. That is why this is so important.
It is important. It is imperatively important. Again, this is Greek hero myths. The information in this, the photography, the pictures, all of it. This is a fantastic place to start. If this ticks your box in any possible way, please pick up a copy to this book. Keep watching this video. There's videos here on this channel that will tell you more, also with Gary on the esoteric astrology and such. Wanted to ask you real quick before we move on to the next question, Gary. You mentioned that as one begins to ascend, the tests get stronger and more intense, and the pitfalls become even more as it says in the myths, you know, you fight one, slay one dragon, and there's a bigger dragon or what have you. And that is symbolic as well. As you get closer or higher to reaching wherever it is that you're going, that your tests become more intense. Is that correct?
Yes, because we're more equipped to handle the more difficult challenges then. Similarly, if one watches the Chronicles of Narnia, my favorite book is The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. You know, the great test there to go to Dark Island and overcome the evil, which can adopt any form, i.e. it's like the Dweller, it's built out of your fears, and then to lay the 7 swords of the Lost Lords Aslan's table, classic symbol for initiation. You know, and when we tread the path, it does get harder until the higher initiations. Heracles descending into the realm of Hades to overcome the monster dog Cerberus, Theseus entering the maze to overcome the Minotaur, Jason having to overcome the sleepless dragon to acquire the golden fleece. You can see the similarities in those myths.
Yes, I just wonder, the interest in these stories is so much in the physicality and the physical body. They're seeing them as physical heroes with physical strength. I'm not sure what percentage of people you encounter that actually sees the symbolism, because I didn't for many years. I didn't understand. Now, as I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, that's that. I can see it's very similar. And the more that I read, the more I realize how little I actually know. How many people do you think watching this, or right now, a percentage of humanity right now, understand that these are not stories about physical things? They're actually about spiritual things. They're about the inner journey, about Jacob's ladder, about the Antakarana, about all of this. What percentage do you think understands the true symbolism behind the Greek hero myths, or the myths in general?
I think within everybody's heart they understand these things, but it's usually through certain experiences, challenges in life, that people then may see certain similarities between the hero quest, not necessarily a Greek one, you know, and what is happening in their very own life. But it does seem very common for people simply to want to read about the Greek heroes in terms of the story, rather than actually want to go deeper. But as I say, I do feel within everyone's psyche and within the heart, we are aware of these things.
And they're valuable, they're here, you can access them, and you can actually recognize quite a bit of your own self within them. Moving forward to, again, we were talking about Mount Olympus on the front of the cover. Now to the general student in high school, Mount Olympus was simply a place that was convenient for the gods to hang out. It's far much more than that. Could you elaborate a little bit on Mount Olympus and of those inhabiting coming down.
Yes, of course. My take on it is that the Greek bards, etc., picked this exalted place, which was very difficult to reach, as being symbolic of where the forces which govern and conduct evolutionary processes reside. They had the Olympian gods, of course, who all symbolize different aspects of creation. In theosophical terms, Zeus, the supreme Olympian, is our divine essence, the monad, very important. Hermes is the psychopomp, the messenger of the soul, because, you know, he's the intermediary. But what is important about Zeus is he becomes involved in these various amours. You know, as an example, he adopts the form of a shower of rain so he can impregnate Danae to give birth to Perseus. She's been imprisoned by a tyrant father. He adopts the form of Alcmene's husband, Father Heracles. He takes the form of an eagle to abduct Ganymede and take him up to Olympus. What that is saying is spirit will have its way with matter in ways which often transcend the boundaries of our normal human values.
Brilliant. Would you mind stating that again? That is a fantastic point.
It will have its way with matter. The Cadmus myth, we see this. There are really two initiations in that myth. Cadmus's sister is Europa, beautiful princess, and Zeus adopts the form of a tame white bull, and with the assistance of Hermes, who places him in a herd, Europa comes across the bull and begins to play with him, drapes flowers around his neck, and then she climbs on top of the bull, who charges into the sea and swims over to Crete, ravages Europa and makes her the queen of the island, and she has children, she acquires certain gifts. This is intercourse with the divine. This is
it is. Yes. Oh, it's so beautiful, the stuff I learn. I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you for all of your work and delving into these myths and explaining them in a way that is so valuable. This is going to be very important in the years to come. And I believe people will start paying more attention. Joseph Campbell's 3 primary stages of the hero's journey. So I know I've heard you mention Joseph Campbell and Douglas Baker and Carl Jung. Would you mind expanding on Joseph Campbell's 3 primary stages, the 3 primary stages of the hero's journey, please?
Yes, he mentions the call to adventure, as I said, you know, when one is called in onto their particular adventure, just as we awaken to the fact that there is more to life than the transient everyday stuff. The 3 stages are separation from the herd, from the rank and file of humanity, freeing oneself from the conditioning effects of astral and mental levels of Jung's collective unconscious. Initiation, that's after all the great tests and trials, of course. Initiation, and then returning to bestow boons upon humanity, as he describes it. Theosophy talks of the 3rd initiation, receiving a portion of the divine plan, and then seeking to implement that on behalf of humanity. We witness this in the Greek myths. In Norse myth, we have Odin acquiring the secrets of the runes so he can use them for the benefit of the gods and humanity. Same thing.
Always to serve, to love, to give back, and once you've attained it, you return until the last teardrop has dried.
Absolutely, of course. And in the life of the Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, undergoing enlightenment after the temptations of Kama Mara, which appear in different guises in the Greek myths, or under different guises, then attaining nirvana, but renouncing it, and vowing to teach others the lessons of his enlightenment until every monad has returned to the source.
That is the ultimate in unconditional love. And at the end of the voice of the silence, it says somebody's coming back to hell to help us all. One is returned. And isn't that, it's just, again, goosebumps on goosebumps. This is all about compassion. These teachings, believe it or not, the foundation is love and compassion and unity and understanding. These are the foundation of all the world's religion, sciences, and philosophies. And again, I'm going to go ahead and put it up here. If you're looking to grab yourself a copy of this book, please do. I will include a link in the description down below, but I'm also going to put it up here on the screen because it is soul-centered astrology, but it's got some dashes in it. So I'm going to make it very clear for you. Soul-centered-astrology.com. The book is not available on Amazon as of the publication of this show, but hopefully you'll be able to grab it wherever you can find it. But right now it is available at soul-centeredastrology.com. The title of the book that we're talking about is Greek Hero Myths, Symbolism of Transformation. This is not just about stories that have nothing to do with you. This has everything to do with you. You are the hero in these myths. I want you to know that you are the hero in these myths. Thank you, Gary, for doing all of the research on this. The stuff that you know about the myths, we could talk again, like I said, forever. There has been a resurgence in the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years that I've noticed of this goddess movement, this feminine energy returning in a way almost to, dare I say the word Trump, the male energy. There's been a lot of male energy and now there's this female energy, but we need both. We do need both. And would you like to expand some on the goddess, the role of the goddess in Greek mythology, or just in
Obviously,
general?
as I perceive it, yes. Indian teachings describe the creation of our universe through the interaction between the lingam and the yoni, the transcendent being pouring its energies into the womb of creation. Of course, the god and goddess are essentially as one, but they appear as two. And the whole of creation is the realm of the goddess, our descent into matter and subsequent return. This is all the domain of the goddess. And goddesses in myth personify different aspects of this. Campbell described the goddesses as representations of deity and manifestation. Similarly, the various female characters in the myth are personifications of the goddess and her orchestrations as a means of assisting spirit to realize its evolutionary objective. Now, Campbell used the phrase secrets of the goddess, and the goddess guards these very jealously because she wants to ensure that every monad realizes its potential of spiritual staying power. This is important. HPB spoke of the veil of Isis, whereby we can transcend the Maya which the goddess casts over her creation as a test, whereby the one life appears as many, and the affairs of everyday life appear as real and enduring. Now, in Greek myth, we have Hera, the consort of Zeus. She is a jealous wife, and she tends to place obstacles in the way of the heroes, particularly Heracles, Hera's glory. All the tests, he eventually realizes the evolutionary objective. The Hera, on the whole, tends to challenge the heroes, but this is necessary. This is part of our growth. Whereas Athena, the warrior goddess, she is the patroness of heroes. She assists them. She gives Perseus the mirror shield. She often assists Heracles. Odysseus, she assists him greatly on his return to Ithaca. I.e., after the Trojan War, he sickens of the violence, spirit getting more and more involved in matter. Then he has to undergo these many challenges before he reunites with his father and his wife Penelope, Hylas Gamos, sacred marriage.
Yes, so beautiful.
Athena is instrumental in the entire process, but we also see representations of the goddess there in the sorceress Circe, in Nausicaa, who assists Odysseus greatly when he's washed ashore in the land of the Phaeacians, where all the ships and crew have gone, etc. These are wonderful myths. They all depict this spiritual path in different ways. But as you say, we must connect with them in terms of our own life. Ask them what the symbolism means to us. You know, we must get out on the playing field, so to speak, not just sit in the stand and look at them academically in a dry manner. We must actually get out there, not just consider them as merely abstractions. This is important, very important, crucial.
I just, there's so many questions that come to mind. One of them is that one of the things that you say, and that I find is so beautifully said, is that you say there's all kinds of love. You know, you have the male and the female. We're talking about these energies and the goddesses in these divine marriages. That is what these marriages take place, it is talking about the lower self to the higher self. You've always said, since we first had our first conversation, that the ultimate love is the unification of the lower self with the higher self. Is that true?
And all opposites within the psyche. Yes, we see. I mean, this is Jung's individuation or wholeness. In Greek myths, we see Cadmus. He marries his consort. Heracles goes through series of relationships. That's a bit different. The fascinating one is when he's handed over to Omphale and they swap each other's clothes and roles in life. But that's just symbolic of the journey of the soul in undergoing all the experiences so the opposites can become unified. We have Perseus and Andromeda. I should have said Cadmus and Harmonia. My apologies. That's Perseus and Andromeda. Theseus seeks a bride that isn't quite successful. He doesn't affect the hieros gamos. He doesn't attain the ultimate initiations. Neither does Jason. This is interesting, you know, in terms of the spiritual path.
Well, pain is the usher of wisdom, from what I understand. So sometimes when you're knocked about and things get really, really, really just extremely painful, there's a reason for everything. But pain can be, I don't know how you describe it, but it can literally, it cracks open the egg for you to move forward. So pain and suffering we always talk about easing the unnecessary suffering. There is some suffering that is necessary for growth.
There's a couple of myths in my book spring to mind straight away. Cadmus and Harmonia. The house of Cadmus undergoes great suffering, loss of children, etc. And they ask to be transformed into serpents. You know, that's a great scorpionic symbol. And they are elevated to the Elysian fields, another symbol of transcendence, the afterlife, you know, and so on and so on. Whereas Heracles, he is tricked. Well, what happens? His wife Deianira is tricked rather by the lustful centaur Nessus, and she is given a shirt which is dipped in the poisonous blood of the Hydra. Heracles puts it on because Deianira gives it to him, believing it will render him faithful. And the pain is so excruciating, it's tearing his skin away.
Oh my.
So he asks for a funeral pyre to be built, which he mounts. Spiritual fire, initiation. He is then transported to Olympus, where he marries Hebe, the daughter of Hera. They depict these higher initiations in different ways, these myths.
So beautifully said, so beautifully said. And again, the symbolism, I cannot stress that enough. Symbolism, 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 interpreted by you, the viewer, the student on the path. Gary does a fantastic way in here. He does a fantastic in-depth look at these through those spiritual eyes. It isn't just telling the stories to tell a story. He's talking about overcoming your lower self and with your higher self. That's the most important thing is I want to illustrate you are the hero. This is about you and all of these.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
So everything applies. In a way, this could be, if you take out the words, these are the teachings coming through in symbols to humanity to apply. It is interesting because I'm a 53-year-old lady, and I honestly, until not very long ago, literally took them only as stories and myths meaning that they were stories of that. But it's interesting how they're similar all over the world with different names, isn't
This
that?
is what Campbell illustrated in his
Yes.
classic work, The Hero
So,
with a Thousand Faces.
right. So why are we saying the same thing? And so I was thinking, that's interesting. So the pyramids and all that stuff. I'm going, oh my God. Now I kind of understand. I don't know if I'll ever understand in whatever lifetime it is.
I think with symbolism, we must be aware of how dynamic and multivalent it is. And symbolism resonates with different people in different ways, according to the content of the psyche in terms of their experiences, etc. And also how we perceive these myths today, they may be perceived differently in 50, 100 years' time as civilization advances.
Yes.
In terms of overcoming the lower nature, when you held up the book, Role of the Goddess, in overcoming Medusa, Athena gives the hero a mirror shield through which he can view Medusa without her countenance turning him to stone because it's so hideous.
Yeah.
And the mirror is symbolic of the need for purification, what the Hindus call viveka, discrimination. That mirror shield must be purified. It's Virgo in astrology. Purification and refinement of personality. It's only then that we can use that mirror shield to view these things. Indian teachings describe often the personality as a mirror, and it must be cleansed of what they call vasanas, or certain attributes, which are derived from samskaras, from previous lives. And spiritual developments about cleaning these vasanas to reflect the light of the Atman, that's our higher self and monad. And only when we have done that can we overcome the tests of Medusa or the Indian Kali and so on. Head is decapitated, Pegasus emerges, he strikes the earth with his hoof, giving rise to the Pierian spring, Atma Buddhi Manas. This is the spring of the muses, you know, which inspires all the great artists, musicians, scientists, seers, and sages. It's only when we are purified to that extent, it reflects the light of the higher self, so we thereby overcome all the challenges, the most greatest challenges the goddess imposes, that we then gain access to these realms. It's very important to bear in mind.
Well, thank you for explaining that. I wanted to hold up that photo that you've got in here. There are some fantastic illustrations and photos and paintings that you have in the book. This is a very high quality book. I mean, seriously, I know from publishing myself that it is very expensive to have color photography like that in here. And we are looking there, that is Heracles. So there we have. Again, the name of the book is Greek Hero Myths, and this is Symbols, okay? Symbolism of transformation, and the transformation is taking place within you, the viewer. If you are here and you're listening, these myths are not there just to entertain. They are telling you the wisdom of the ages. And Gary does a fantastic job of explaining that in this book, which is available at this website, which I'm going to put up again on the screen and is also inside the text down below. It is soul-centered-astrology.com. Just click on books in the upper right-hand corner. You'll be taken to this. You'll recognize this beautiful cover. There's still lots to talk about. Gary, I wanted to ask you about the testing. So a lot of people, when they're going through all of these horrible, you know, things in life, think, what is the point? I've had people ask me that. They go, what is the point of this life if there's so much suffering? Why are there children that are taken away and are tortured? What is the point? What about these trials of life? And there is a lot of suffering. This is a place of great suffering, our physical world. If you can talk about the hero, which is you, not just Gary, but all of you, everyone, not just Gary. Gary is one too, but so are you. And you're just as heroic as any of these guys in here too. This is your information. This is like a handbook, if you will, for you to be able to, if you can interpret these, and however you interpret them is your truth.
Exactly how you interpret them.
Yeah, and that's so.
I'm just off guidelines in the light of teachings I've studied and in terms of my particular psyche. And bear in mind, sorry, Anna.
I'm so sorry.
Bear in mind treading the path. In the Greek hero myths, it's very common for the protagonist to possess either a divine father or divine lineage and an earthly mother. This is symbolic of our duality, spirit encased in matter. This is very, very common. Cadmus, Perseus, Heracles, Theseus, Bellerophon, they are each comprised of this essential duality. And of course, we are projected down into matter to spiritualize it, to unify the opposite within the human psyche, to acquire what the wisdom teachings call spiritual staying power, which we then take to the Father's house, Odysseus returning to Ithaca as part of this great evolutionary design.
Because that's what we're here to do. We are here to evolve, to overcome ourselves. We are spirit and matter, both. And we must, once we recognize that, that's probably why you're here. If you're watching this, you're sniffing around the Theosophical channels. That's what I did. I was just drawn to it. I thought there's something there. And the more I studied, the more I wanted to learn, the more I wanted to apply it. And in applying it and understanding that it isn't just because so-and-so said so, by applying it and going through it myself, I found there to be truth based on fact, not just my own belief. So, and I'm only a student on the journey. This is not about me. This channel is not about me. This channel is about the ancient teachings. This is about the ancient knowledge, the ancient wisdom that has come through many veins. As you mentioned, what was it, 1,000 Faces? Was that Douglas?
Joseph Campbell's work? Yeah, I mean, that is just the ultimate classic on the hero myths. He describes the various archetypal themes. Just everyone should have that book on their shelf.
Yes, that's a good, and everyone should have this book on their shelf too. This is the book they need to have on their shelf. I wasn't going to say that. Well, that's what I'm here for, because everybody needs to have this book on their shelf as well. It is called Greek Hero Myths. It is brand new. Again, fresh off the printer. I was speaking with him just a little bit ago, a couple weeks ago, when it was being printed, and because of the temperature, it was being printed. They had to stop printing because it was heating up the room, because the temperatures here in the UK were a little bit warm at that time when this was being printed. And if you want to get your copy, we'll put that up again. It is soul-centeredastrology.com. Go to the book section and you can order yours today. Gary does the footwork, actually. He does quite a bit of the behind the scenes work to get all of this out. This is a labor of love for Gary as well. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing your knowledge with us, for you to dedicate your time to help perhaps whoever it is that's watching this right now, and whoever that is, you know who you are. And if it's ticking something inside of you going, I want to find out more. Well, these myths, again, are for you, again, not for entertainment. They're instructions. They're instructions for you to find out who you truly are, and to put that into application, and pay attention to your dreams, as Gary was saying earlier. The symbolism that is interpreted by you from your higher self, or in meditation, when you are quiet, when you quiet the physical self, and you're able to have things pop up, things happen, and you'll hear the instruction from your higher self. If you're quiet enough, you can hear that. So do that as often as possible. But in dreams and the astral world, there's so much more that Gary can talk about. Again, he's a metaphysician. He's an esoteric astrologer. I got to give a shout out to you for that as well. I know we've talked only about the book, but Gary does do unbelievable accuracy to the point where it'll stop you in your tracks, and you're like, there's no way that you could have known that. And he's ridiculously affordable as well. And you can find him at that website as well. I've had a reading with him. My husband has, other people that I've known have, and it's just bang on. I don't know how you managed to do that, but you sure know your stuff.
That's a lovely entree just to say a little bit about Douglas Baker's work with his esoteric astrology, in that it follows on from Jung's work in terms of archetypes being represented within the human psyche as symbols, because he has developed a technique known as the Cleargate method, where one can proposition the unconscious, ask the higher self questions in terms of the astrological chart, and receive symbolic feedback through dreams. He produced a whole 3-volume dictionary of astrology on this basis. It's very, very profound. One of the reasons I started to embrace myth, I studied Theosophy and related teachings, and I did Douglas's course and tutored on it. And I thought, what can I do to not take the teachings further as such, but I simply didn't wish to repeat what had gone before, because I certainly couldn't do it any better than H.P. Blavatsky, for example, which I'm stating the obvious. But I became fascinated with symbolism in the work of Jung. And if I could just show another couple of quotes, Anne, would that be possible? So here is a quote by J.J. Bachofen. The symbol awakens, intimation speech can only explain. The symbol plucks the strings of the human spirit at once. Speech is compelled to take up a single thought at a time. The symbol strikes its roots in the most secret depths of the soul. Language skims over the surface of the understanding. Symbols can encapsulate so many things in terms of their image. Jung said a symbol can never be drained of its meaning, because when we seek to interpret the symbol, we are operating at the level of the higher mind. Like quantum superpositioning, there's all these diverse possibilities in terms of interpretation. I'm going backwards. Now, I apologize for this passage being lengthy, but it is my favorite one by Campbell's mentor, Heinrich Zimmer, who states, access to truth demands a passage beyond the compass of ordered thought. And by the same token, the teaching of transcendent truth cannot be by logic, but only by pregnant paradox and by symbol and image. Where a carefully reasoned thinker, progressing step by step, would be forced to halt, out of breath as it were, at the confines of the stratosphere, panting for lack of oxygen, swooning with pulmonary and cardiac distress, the mind can still go on. The mind can soar and enter the supernal sphere on the wings of symbols, which represent the truth beyond the pairs of opposites. Jason going through the Symplegades, eluding by those wings a bird net of the basic principle of earthbound human logic, the pedestrian principle of the incompatibility of opposites. For what transcendent means is the transcending, among other things, of the bounding and basic logical laws of the human mind. Now, I particularly like that quote, and I think what's also important is this particular one from Joseph Campbell. Bear in mind, myth is only one particular vehicle to transcendence, and when we get there, we don't require it, just as we don't require the boat after we've crossed the river. Yeah. The Buddhists talk of yanas, or ferry boats, which take one from the shore of everyday life to that of transcendence. Theosophy is a yana or ferry boat, the Kabbalah, esoteric astrology, alchemy, numerology, and so on. Campbell states, myth is but the penultimate. The ultimate is openness, that void or being beyond the categories into which the mind must plunge alone and be dissolved. Therefore, God and the gods are only convenient means themselves of the nature of the world of names and forms, though eloquent of and ultimately conducive to the ineffable. They are mere symbols to move and awaken the mind and to call it past themselves. So there's some quotes which are rather dear to me, I would have to say. Can I just come off the screen?
Yeah,
can we edit this bit?
Screen. They are very dear to me as well. They are beautiful. Thank you for sharing them. Yeah, just go ahead and close it. That's all good. We should pop up again. Love those quotes, Gary. Thank you so much. They are beautiful, perfect, and just absolutely like a bullseye. They are a bullseye. Symbolism, symbolism, symbolism. Pay attention to that, because that can't be warped by language or interpretation. It's really your interpretation of the symbolism that comes to you either through the ancient myths or through your own dreams or through your meditations. Your higher self is always in communication with you. This book that we've been talking about tonight is called Greek Hero Myths, and it's written by the lovely Gary Kidgell, who's been with me for the last hour and with you. Again, it is symbolism, the symbols, okay, of transformation. And that transformation is not happening on a screen at a movie theater or just in a book to entertain you. It is happening within yourself. These heroes are you. I can't say that enough. It's you that it's been talking about all along, ever since the beginning of time itself. Gary, what a wonderful honor it is always to have you on this show.
Well, I would have to say the same, Anne, and those particular quotes, not mine, obviously, are ones which have particularly inspired me and ones which I have felt to be very important in terms of inclusion in my work. And to conclude, I would also state this is inspired by Douglas Baker. Once when I was with him on tour, he said, if one person takes to the wisdom teachings, the tour is worthwhile. And that is the same with my book. If one person, if that resonates particularly, if that inspires them to undertake their own hero's journey, then my work is done in that respect.
Well, I tell you what, I'm grateful for your work. Thank you for suiting up and showing up to do it. Thank you for being willing to share these teachings, not knowing if anybody is going to get it. It doesn't really matter. The thing is, we're putting them out there. We have at our fingertips digital technology. We have the modern world is connected. No longer do you have to go to a secret lodge or a library. They're available for you here online. This video and lots of videos here with Gary and others are absolutely free. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, again, I can't say enough how important this would be for you to have a copy, or even just start looking it up online and look at it through different sets of eyes. Rather than just being stories to entertain, they are stories of truth. They are stories of wisdom that you can apply in your own life and become that hero. And Gary, I look forward to having you back again. I can't say how much I love you. I love you so much. Book a reading with this guy. I know he's busy for the next little bit, but you'd be surprised. And the reason I got one with him the first time is because we have the same birthday, not birth date, but birthday. And he mentioned some of the things. I went, that's weird. That's really accurate. That's weird. That's really accurate. And then I had the reading and it was mind-blowingly accurate, because as you talk about in esoteric astrology, that when you come into this world, the time and place, you have the, the longitude, latitude, the time, with the way the stars are, that's like your roadmap. How did you describe it? You said it was a mandala, if you will.
Yes, it is. It's one's route to wholeness. The soul has chosen that particular point in time and space to incarnate as being appropriate to the expression of its purpose. It's aligned to the intent of the universe at that time. And so it's our route to wholeness of being. It's a map of the psyche, which will help us to negotiate the various challenges and circumstances we find in our life, but always with a view towards our spiritual development and growth.
That's true. It says, a lot of people say there's no instruction manual for life, but there surely is, because stars teach as well as shine, is what it said. This is for us to take a look at, pay attention to, and put into application. Gary Kidgell, I love you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Everybody go get your copy, and links down below. And thank you for being with us. And again, I'm here with you in the live chat, but this visual that you're seeing was recorded earlier. And Gary, we look forward to having you on again, because I'm sure there's lots in your future that you'll be doing and sharing. Thank you so much. I love you. Is there anything you'd like to say before we finally close? Anything at all?
I'd just like to thank you immensely, Anne. It's a pleasure to know you. It's a pleasure to be involved with your work. It's a pleasure for me to be a member of the Theosophical Society. We're involved with a library project up in Scotland, looking to connect with various theosophical and like-minded bodies, I hasten to add, throughout the world in terms of sharing the content. And hopefully that too will have an effect on the human condition at what is a particularly challenging but very potent, very pregnant time in terms of the spiritual evolution of humanity. That is basically what I'd like to say. And thank you so much. It was a pleasure to do the interview, and I really enjoy working with you, and you do wonderful
We're doing
work.
it together.
Very, very important.
together, it's the exact same thing. I'm just here to be of service to humanity, and thank God for the internet, because now that is a way for us to connect and go forward into the world where people who wouldn't have access to these teachings now can have access, and they can put that into application. And bit by bit, if we overcome ourselves, we change the world we're living in. So there is hope, and there is everything that you're looking for is right there. If you just want to keep looking, just open your eyes. And if this resonates with you, then check out the book, and thank you. And we'll see you again next time. Again, this is brought to you by the TSE out of London, England, and also the brand new Virtual Center for Theosophical Studies, which is it's a brand new global organization, which is helping to target the youth to use this digital platform to reach younger folks, to get these theosophical and ancient knowledge out to those who are hungry for it. So on that note, we will close, and thank you very much. We will see you. I'll see you in this book. I'll be reading it with you. I love you, Gary Kidgell. Have a good night, honey. I love you. Mwah.
You too, Anne. Thank you so much.